Wow. Ambassadors, distinguished colleague, Bruce and Beverly, friends, family, colleagues, Lindsay, and the rest of the incredibly inspiring survivors. It's really inspiring to be part of this group of people. You know, when you're just getting to know somebody, it's not so often that, not so uncommon that somebody says, well, what do you do for a living? And you tell them, well, I'm an oncologist, I'm a pediatric, and I work in diseases in young adults and adolescents, and they say, oh my goodness, how in the world can you do that? And you know, my first instinct is always, and it remains, it's validated here tonight, how in the world can I do anything else? It's such an inspiration, an honor, and a joy to get to know and to be able to share with the kind of people that are filling this room tonight. Like each of you, in your own ways, I'm kind of a fighter. I don't give up very easily. And what I find is that by living and working with patients and survivors and colleagues engaged in this fight with me, is that I'm surrounded with people like me and you. We're willing to take on challenges and fight and persevere against odds that aren't necessarily all that great all that time. That's sort of the way I see it as a physician and a scientist trying to find new ways to treat these diseases. I don't pretend to know what it feels like as a patient faced with these kinds of odds. How you look within yourselves to find the emotional and physical energy that it takes to really, really push your body through that treatment or through that bicycle ride or through the chronic pain and the trouble that I know that many of you have years after your therapy is over. So when Bruce asked me to talk tonight, of course, the first thing he told me was very clearly no PowerPoint slides. And I don't think it's very fair that you got PowerPoint slides. It's really hard for us scientists to speak without PowerPoint slides. But, you know, what I thought was, geez, okay, well, maybe what I really ought to talk about is what we, coming from disparate walks of life, but coming together for a common theme tonight are sharing. And what are we touching upon that brings us together? And it's really an energy and a drive that we can acquire from one another. And at first I thought, well, is it about hope? But you know, hope has become such an overused word, and it's actually turned in sometimes to a bit of a cliche. And I think that it's really more than hope, that things in the future that will make progress and that we'll be able to cure more patients and that the diseases and the therapies will have less toxicity. It's the trust and the expectation that each one of us, every single one of us in the room here, are powerful enough in our own way to make a difference. I spend much of my life with scientists, and these are the kind of folks who would like to believe, and they would like to have others believe, that they're really driven by facts. Just the facts, ma'am, and by data, and not by these kind of soft, you know, emotions, this kind of energy that you can feel when you know, share these kind of experiences with other humans. But what I see is that the difference between those who are great and those who just go through the motions is really the belief to the core that they're going to make a difference in whatever field they choose. The scientists, the physicians, the caregivers, they're all human, and they believe, they expect that they can and that they will make a difference. And this is what drives them to really make breakthroughs. For many of you, survivors, caregivers, advocates, you have already had that taste of truly being able to change the future. And it's kind of addicting, because once you realize, wow, I can really make a difference, you're sort of off to the races. For others who might be sort of new to this kind of idea, this might be the beginning of a journey. But it is really through participating with others and getting that energy from others who inspire you that you move beyond the point of just hoping that things will go well and trusting to the point of expecting that you will be able to make a difference. Now, beyond this idea that we have to go beyond hope, I also want to make the point that the only real way, absolutely the only way that any of us can really make a difference is by working together. And it's true for any problem, but it can't be any truer than for a rare disease like sarcoma. As a scientist, you might think, well, we toil away in a lab, and if we come up with a discovery, won't that be great? But in fact, it doesn't matter how exciting our idea is or our therapy. Someone else has to decide to fund that idea, or we're nowhere. We're absolutely dependent on philanthropy, government, industry, all kinds of other people to fund our ideas. And even if we get all the funding in the world that it takes to do the sophisticated science that's necessary today, if we don't have the trust of our patients, we're not able to test our new treatments. We are absolutely dependent on the trust that our patients put into us that we're going to move our therapies to the clinic as rapidly as possible, but without being irresponsible. And these patients then begin to feel that they're actually part of the scientific process, because indeed they are. I had a patient that I cared for several years, and regrettably he passed away a few months ago. He had desmoplastic small round cell tumor, another rare sarcoma. And he was from Nebraska, a little town in Nebraska, and you know, he was about 25 and had been struggling with this disease, and so he had kind of a job, and it wasn't a great job, and he really got most of his social, you know, he had his social life kind of out in the bars. And it wasn't like, he wasn't the kind of a guy who drank too much or did anything, but this is just where he got to meet people. And of course, when he'd meet some girls, and the girls would come up to him and they'd say, so Ryan, what do you do? What do you do? And he, you know, they wouldn't know that he had been under treatment or such. And he says, well, I'm in scientific research. Oh, you are? And he'd say, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Where do you do this? Oh, in the National Institutes of Health. Really? What do you study? Sarcoma. What's sarcoma? Desmoplastic small round cell tumor. And you know, he'd have this girl in the palm of his hand because she'd think, wow, this guy's really brilliant. And in fact, he was. He was studying sarcoma. Every few weeks, he'd come back to the NIH, and he was certainly an active participant in his care. He knew more about that disease than most people. And so he was really had the taste of actively participating in his own care, and therefore contributing to the future. So we rely on our patients, we rely on our funding mechanisms, we rely on individuals and families. And I want to make a special point of this newfound reliance that I think is something that I really cannot get beyond, is those individuals and families who have lost loved ones to cancer, but who move on in the most altruistic of ways, rather than turning inward with their grief, to work for bettering the world of others in a way, even though it can't bring back their loss. Bruce and Beverly embody a whole new culture of individuals who turn loss and tragedy into purpose, and they can truly make an incredible difference in the future for a given disease.